Hello.
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 Hey,
It's your dear friend Sue Bopper Simpson.
Sue Bopper Simpson.
Uh-huh.
I'm taking my own head and screwing it on right. And no guy's gonna tell me that it ain't. Woman, you're such a mystery to me. I'm too obsessed with my masculinity. How I wish that I was in your league. But instead, I'm just a filthy, sexist pig. Is that beautiful?
You are so beautiful to me.
To me.
Can't you see?
Hi, David. Okay, everybody.
How's it going?
I'm doing good. I'm talking to an old friend of mine named David Carter, who I've met in 1987, 88.
Something like that.
We've been friends ever
Probably,
since
probably 87.
87, and you were my roommate a long time ago too.
Yep. That
Yep.
was probably around 89, right after I graduated high school.
Right. and I've known David for a really long time, and in the last when did the first book Familiar come out? Was that like 7 years ago, 6 years ago?
No, that was 2016.
Okay, so
No.
not too far off. But anyway, David has been a book writer, author with I believe it's 3 books out now and another one to come, right?
4 out now and 1 to come in June.
Oh, okay, 5 books. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that since you are an author and that you decided to take all this on, as well as doing what's your day job again for the folks online at the 10 folks at online watching?
I am a librarian at the local community college.
Well, before we go into your life and stuff, I want to talk a little bit about all your writing and stuff. You said that you sort of were a writer for a really long time, or you're no stranger to writing, but I guess it's only been since you first started putting out books that you're a natural author. When did you start realizing that you enjoyed writing down stuff, and what's your journey as far as writing goes? Were you writing as a kid? Had a diary?
Yeah, yeah, I was. I kept a journal like really early on, but I can distinctly remember. I don't know exactly how old I was, probably like 8 or 9, something like that. And my dad was out of town, and so my mom took me and my brother to a restaurant somewhere in town to go eat. And I can remember my brother is a huge to this day, huge comic book addict, and he always was as a kid, superheroes and all that stuff. And so he'd finish a comic book and I would start to read it. And I remember I wasn't all that into it, but I remember just kind of flipping through them. And I remember being struck when we were driving to this restaurant by this ad in the comic book. And it was, an ad, I guess, I don't know who it was targeting, but it said something like, "Are your children ashamed of you because you never earned your high school diploma? Well, now you can take this, correspondence course or whatever and earn your high school diploma, and your kids will be proud." And I remember thinking, this is the stupidest. Why would anyone care if their parents graduated high school? At that age, I just, I didn't get it. So I remember I got home that night and I got my little notebook and I wrote a play about a woman whose children were very ashamed of her for not graduating high school, and that their friend, her kids' friends tormented them because she didn't graduate high school. So she decided she was going to take this correspondence course and graduate high school. And I remember the last line of the play was, "Oh, happy day will never be disgraced again."
So just from looking at that, you just went home and it just blurted out this like short story.
Yeah, a little script. So that's the first thing, the first creative writing I remember sitting down and doing.
Right. And I guess that you would sort of do that off and on over the years until there was this point where you were like, I think I have a book in me. And then that was how the first book, Familiar, came to be. Is that
Sort of, not exactly, because I start like so I didn't do well in high school and ended up leaving high school. And so you and I ended up as roommates working at the same restaurant. And
Rathskeller on Hillsborough Street in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's right. And so right across the street from the Rathskeller, North Carolina State University. And at some point I said to myself, I really don't want to wash dishes for the rest of my life. I need to think about what I want to do. So I took some classes, and I took a little writing class at State, and I also took a film class at State, and I ended up doing well in those. So I ended up going to college in Greensboro. Yes. And doing more writing there. But I have the 5 books out in June, but I've got like 10 times that much filed away that I think is just it's not in good enough shape to ever be published. So maybe it will be one day, but I've got so much stuff. And so I started, I think the first time I sat down and really finished a novel was probably, I was like 21, 22, but it was just, it's dreadful.
Dreadful meaning that you have a giant backlog of stuff, or dreadful that the actual work is dreadful and that you had to go from there to get to a point where you felt better about what you were doing, I guess?
Yeah. It took me a long time to get comfortable enough to show stuff really to people that I thought might take it seriously.
Yeah, it took me years to get, well, you remember, I drew all the time, but it still took me years and years to get to wherever I am now. It took a long time, except I didn't have the whereabout of not letting people see it. I was just enthusiastic, so it didn't really matter, I guess. So, well, why write? Why do you write? That's a good question.
I don't know. I think a couple of things, there's not much else that I feel like I do really well. I'm not musically talented. I can draw and paint a little bit, but it's not something that really I'm fluid at like you are. It's not as easy for me.
Yeah.
Writing's not easy, but there's a writer, Doris Lessing. She won the Nobel Prize, and she's dead now, but I liked her a lot. And she said at one point, if I did not do this, I would be mentally ill or an alcoholic, because for me, it's a balancing mechanism. It's just a way of processing things. And I kind of relate to that. I think it's a way that I work. It's not as simple as that, but it's a way of working through stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. It's for me, that kind of makes sense. It's like I'm compelled, I have to do it. Like if I go a couple of days without drawing, I start to feel weird. I start to get antsy, and it's like it's one of the few things I do where I feel completely comfortable doing it, regardless of how good it is to other people. There's like a feeling of satisfaction that I can't really get. Playing music, there's because I did that off and on for a long time. That's sort of number 2, I guess, for that sort of upheaval of creativity or whatever. But yeah, it's just compulsive, I guess. And you told me that like when you started, when all this stuff started happening for you, that you would get up extra early just to work on your dedicate some time before you'd have to go to work to your craft and just work out ideas and putting aside a chunk of time to keep at it. I imagine you still do that.
Yeah, I still do. It's a little easier now with COVID. That's not going to last. But, I have abbreviated work hours. I can go into work later, so I don't have to get up as early.
Right.
But that really, that started, I had a job like around the mid 2000s. It was basically second shift. I worked at the homeless shelter from 3 in the afternoon to 11 at night. And that gave me all day to do my thing. And then I went back to working regular 9 to 5 schedule. I really missed having that the first part of my day dedicated to doing my own work, my own thing. So I just made myself start to get up really early to do that. And so since then, it's gotten easier through the years to do that.
Yeah. Well, you've also put out like a pretty astonishing amount of work in a pretty short time, really, when all is said and done. I thought it was like 3 books with a 4th one coming, but it's 4 with a 5th one coming. What do you attribute this to? Is it just like the work is its own reward and it's compulsive and I have all these ideas and I can't stop and I'm finding people and publishers that want to do it, so I'm just going to keep on going, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of that. I mean, I've got so much material because I've been doing this, seriously since my 20s. Just churning out material, no matter how good or bad it is. And I don't really get it. So I'll never run out of that. Part of it is the fact that I was finally able to place familiar and get a little attention from that. And then that led to other opportunities. And so it just, once you kind of break in somehow, then it gets easier. So it does seem to me that I'm working faster, a little bit faster now, that I'm able, that I know that there's an endpoint. It's going somewhere. People are actually going to read it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you if you could describe your writing style or what you write, because I don't think I really would do it justice. So I think the easier thing would be for me to ask you, if somebody said, well, what kind of stuff are you writing? Because like at first glance, the label I would throw would be like, and this is just because of a lack of anything else that I know about that I could say, but it's kind of tinted religiously, I guess. And I don't even know what kind of writing that's aimed toward, religious fiction or whatever. But and I could be totally wrong here, but if somebody asked you, well, what kind of stuff do you write? What would you say?
Well, not everything's the same, but a lot is. It's kind of like it's fiction that uses religion and particularly Christianity, Catholicism as the kind of building blocks. So I wouldn't categorize it as like inspirational fiction or Christian fiction or anything like that, because it's not. I don't want to put stuff out there to try and convert anyone. It's for people who are maybe religious, definitely interested in religion, either objectively or as a part of their life. Either one.
Right.
I guess the best analogy I can kind of think of that might help an incalculable influence to both of us would be Charles Schulz.
Yeah.
Who had, Peanuts and all of that. It wasn't exclusively devoted to religious issues, but he had that interest and it was definitely in there.
Right. But I mean, there would be all kinds of like references to things that were of a religious nature, and mixing in with that was this huge amount of melancholy. It's just, Peanuts is like, I think that's maybe another thing I kind of was attracted to by Charles Schulz's work, is that It's funny. I mean, there's some really funny stuff for like a 8-year-old kid to like or whatever, but there's this huge amount of just realistic melancholy, kind of like the kids are like adults actually. You know, they don't really act like children. And there was something in that. There was a certain kind of sadness that seemed real that I gravitated toward, that I probably enjoyed more than I didn't read superhero comics till later, when my little brother Mark got me into it, like when I was in high school. But yeah, there was something about his stuff. You know, there's a lot of things I didn't get, like, you know, the religious overtones or whatever. But there's a lot of cruelty and heart and humanity in his work. So
Yeah.
you know,
the way Lucy acts. And I remember being so struck by, no one really talks about Charlie Brown's sister Sally a lot.
they don't.
But I really identified her with her, because she was always like, had this anxiety disorder about school.
Yeah, she hated going to school. She would dread it and fear it, and she would do everything she could to get out of school. And then when she went to school one time, she was like, "School is great. I love school." Right?
And then she started talking to the school building.
That's right.
There was that series. I mean, so random and bizarre. And if someone, you know, bullied her, the school building would drop a brick onto their head. It was
That's
just
right. I was totally with Peanuts until a certain point, and I think it was when they introduced Lucy and Linus's little brother. When Rerun showed up, then it was over.
Okay.
I don't know why. And then, you know, I mean, God bless Charles Schultz. He was like such a interesting, he was like a quiet, smoldering volcano.
Yeah.
You know, so Charles Schultz was a big influence. Is a lot of it because of the heart of what he did, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. I think just, you know, he just tackled everything, and it just seemed like this little universe that he created was, there was just something there for everybody, I think, to relate to.
Yeah.
It was very lovable, you know, not perfect characters, definitely some cruelty, melancholy, but somehow very lovable.
Let me try to put this in a weird way. So who exactly, do you know who your audience is? Do you, like, is there even a type of person that would be interested in what you do? Is because, like, it just seems like it's a very individual, despite the parameters set up as far as what inspires you to write and how it could be interpreted. It doesn't seem like it seems like a pretty individualistic sort of endeavor. So do you know who your audience is? Is there a type of person that would gravitate toward what you do? Or
well, it's hard to say, because it's so hard to know who's actually out there reading it. I've gotten a few Amazon reviews, Goodreads reviews, things like that, but I just basically kind of try to, and the publishers, you know, there's no like genre really attached to it. So I think, I mean, there's more fiction out there than you might think that is kind of similar to mine, that isn't dogmatic or trying to convert anyone, but does use this kind of religious architecture to just populate the story.
right.
So people who are interested in, I'm trying to think of, well, you know, someone like, I'm not claiming any sort of quality along the lines of Flannery O'Connor, but she's someone who was very much writing from, she was very, very staunch Catholic, but also critical of of the Catholic Church. And so she was, you can see that in a lot of what she was writing. And you can also see in a lot of what she was writing, her kind of being an outsider in the American South because she was Catholic, and kind of looking at the religious sort of craziness down here, and really using that in her fiction.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not comparing myself to her, but if you like her,
I know, but I mean, like, even like that puts you in company of and I know you're not comparing yourself to any of these people, but the first person I thought of after you said Flannery O'Connor was somebody that obviously liked Flannery O'Connor, and that would be somebody like Nick Cave, who uses a lot, can't get away from using a lot of religious imagery in his music and the words he chooses to write, and and he's really funny, and there's a big sense of humor there, but it would be kind of hard to imagine that there's a lot of devout Catholics really into Nick Cave, if you know what I mean. But that's the first person I thought of. I just thought, well, Nick Cave is somebody that uses tons of religious imagery for his writing, and not just music, but his screenplays and things like that. So it's there for anybody that wants it, but there's no clear-cut audience, which I kind of knew going into it. I would think that mainly what it would be, if somebody was interested in your stuff, it would be somebody that, maybe thought about things a little bit and had some sort of intelligence, I would say. It's not going to be for everybody, but I imagine the people that get something out of it, because you are a good writer, they'll definitely get something out of it. So, and also, like you said, you don't really know who's really out there. It's the same thing. I don't, except for being online and stuff, I don't actually see people that tell me what they think or criticize anything or whatever, So, but it seems like the people that like it, from what you tell me, really like it. I read some of those nice reviews in the press packet you sent me, so that's cool.
I hope so. I mean, I wouldn't want to think that you would have to have like a religious sensibility to appreciate it. And I always try to drop in, I don't really try to, but it happens that I drop in kind of like references that come from, the other aspects of my life, musical influences and things like that. I've got a chapter in Familiar called Spiritual Cramp. So
what's that
if you're a Christian, you might like my stuff. There's one disturbing the priest, another chapter.
Right. Yeah, right. Would you say that you brought up Flannery O'Connor? Would you say that your background, you grew up here, you had an interesting upbringing, to say the least, and some of that is very, very Southern, and Flannery O'Connor obviously is Southern. Do you think that your background as a child growing up was influential to you as far as the path you decided to take, as far as your style of writing? I would think it would have to be. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm from Durham originally, and my whole family is like either from Durham or Fuquay-Varina, little towns around. Yeah, which isn't a little town anymore, but it was when we were growing up. So, very rural. And I think, my dad was not religious. He was agnostic, basically atheist, but my mother is quite religious. And I think that no matter what, if you grew up here, the kind of Bible Belt atmosphere just pervaded everything, pervaded your life somehow. And so you just kind of soak that in, and it influences you. Oh, well, I was just going to say, we have a lot of friends, you and I, that are from this very peculiar part of North Carolina where they have this strong, almost Old English dialect. And I'm so obsessed with this area and this population that I wrote 2 books about it. This one, And this one all take place in the countryside outside of Beaufort, North Carolina. So that's another thing that's really kind of and these two books aren't necessarily don't have a lot of religious themes or overtones or anything like that, but very much that kind of
Travel
peculiar Southern culture. Yeah.
Like instead of Jack London writing about a Canadian snowfall and bears, you're writing about a Dollar General on every corner and church on every other corner. Well, that's not what you do. Yeah. If people want to get in touch with you and they want to be exposed to your 4 books, with the 5th one coming, is there a website and stuff where people can go to?
Yeah, I do have a website, and I can send you a link to that. And what I've done there is just linked everything to where you can purchase the books. It's always best to purchase, and usually cheaper to buy books straight from the publisher's website.
Yeah, of course.
Amazon, or if there's a local bookstore, I like to support local, independent bookstores like we have here. We have a few here in Raleigh, so they can get anything they want. If you go in and say, "Oh, I'd like to," if you guys could order Familiar or whatever for me, it's easy for them to get that in, and that helps them.
Right. I feel with you. Well, thank you so much for taking 45 minutes out of your day to talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah.